the Monday, October 16th, 2017 Board of Health meeting. We'll start by calling the meeting to order, which I didn't have to do last week because I didn't have a gavel. And this week we will call it to order and start the meeting with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So it should be a relatively brief meeting tonight, everyone. We have a few items on the agenda to talk through. One is obviously the same as always, reviewing last month's minutes, which I have done and I have no issues with. But if anybody has any additions, subtractions, spelling mistakes on the minutes that they want to update, so we can send them to the township for posting on the website. Anybody? No. So we'll bring the approval of the minutes to a vote. If there's a second. Second. Anybody all in favor of approving the minutes? Aye. Minutes are approved. So we'll put those on the website as well for the community. All right. We'll go on to the health officer's report, please.
Okay, there was 29 food safety inspections, including 2 new owners in September, 1 temporary event, the Fall Festival, 12 bathing place inspections, 27 quality of life concerns, including but not limited to fire in Villanova's dish room, weeds overgrown, bed bug infestation, flies associated with outside garbage, dog bite to UPS worker. There was a workplace safety committee meeting, the CASA training, and then there was the St. David's auction and fair on October 7th. The health alerts were emailed to everyone, and the National Wellness Institute October and November observances are attached. Thank you.
Catherine, just a real quick question. I mean, what involvement did the township get involved with the bed bug infestation and the dog bite? Is this the kind of thing that they're inspecting and looking and asking questions about who the owner of the dog and this kind of thing was?
Sorry, were you asking about the bed bug infestation or the dog bite?
Start with the dog bite. I'm just kind of curious.
The dog bite, so we just follow up with the owner of the dog, make sure the dog's rabies vaccinations were up to date when the dog bit the person. And then usually the dog's quarantined for 10 days, and we make sure after the quarantine that we get a post-bite exam and then keep in touch with the person who was bitten, make sure they're doing okay.
And the township gets involved with bed bug infestations, or is that something that the owners take care of on their own?
This was apartment? Yeah. This was apartment building, and we got an anonymous letter, so we just followed up with the apartment owner and made sure they were taking the right steps. And I think they were having a dog coming in and searching for bed bugs and just educating them, making sure they're taking the right steps.
Thank you. I think certainly that's an issue that's you hear about once in a while, especially in the national news and some of the bigger cities and travelers and whatnot. And I think it's something interesting that maybe somebody on the board has some interest in talking about, because I think it's probably more common than we know. Okay. On to some old business. I think we're going to finally formalize this today. So let's talk about our chicken recommendation for the Board of Commissioners to see if we can finally change some rules in the township. So Dr. Capuzzi's been nice enough to write out a formal presentation, I guess, a statement to the Board of Commissioners. And I'd like to have you just sort of, we're going to pass these down. And I'd like to, if it's okay, if you would read some of the stuff that you wrote in the beginning, which I think is important information for us.
Do we want to just discuss the actual ordinance, or?
I think we would like to hear about this, about chicken husbandry. I think it's kind of cool.
Okay, all right. So should I read this?
Sure.
All right. Chicken Chicken husbandry is a great part of our culture and national heritage in America. When industrialization surged in the late 1800s, it tailed off. But chicken ownership has made a resurgence in the last decade as the farm-to-table trend has swept the nation. In recent years, the housing of chickens has become legalized in many cities, including Chicago, San Francisco, Minneapolis, Seattle, New York City, and Philadelphia. In fact, 94 of the 100 most populous cities in the country allow their residents to house chickens. Some municipalities even encourage chicken ownership for environmental reasons. To address the issue of organic waste, a single chicken can consume some 84 pounds of food and yard waste biomass annually. The city of Austin, Texas, provides qualifying households with 2 chickens apiece. Home composting is part of the plan, so that's just one example. This broad legalization has followed increased public demand to raise backyard chickens. According to a 2010 survey by the USDA, nearly 1% of households own chickens, and 4% hope to own them in the next 5 years. Animal care behooves children and families in general. Chickens offer an interesting learning experience as far as biology, ecology, and environmental awareness. Further, understanding where our food comes from and impacting the outcome as far as egg and meat quality are concerned is both empowering and humbling. Were they permitted to raise chickens, Radnor Township residents could produce hormone and drug-free eggs and meat that are not disinfected by potentially hazardous chemicals such as formaldehyde. They can also access a product that is fresher than anything on grocery store shelves. The USDA allows a 6-week shelf life for eggs, during which time their flavor and hydration deteriorates. As omnivores, chickens offer economic benefits. Pelleted feed can be supplemented by supper leftovers, such as fruits, vegetables, grains, meats. This cuts down on feed costs to the backyard farmer and saves on garbage transportation and landfill fees for the township. Furthermore, chicken manure makes fantastic garden fertilizer. While health concerns associated with backyard chickens have been raised, chickens likely pose no greater risk than the exposures we have to birds and other wildlife through everyday living. Plus, we are exposed to salmonella when we eat eggs from the grocery store and prepared foods that include raw or lightly cooked eggs. Salmonella is a normal avian commensal. It proliferates in stressed birds, such as those at large commercial egg producers, where hens are maintained in cramped, overcrowded spaces. Chickens raised in controlled populations with adequate space and exposure to the outdoors are generally healthier and less prone to salmonella proliferation. Regardless, public education about proper chicken husbandry is key to reducing the risk of salmonellosis in people. Common sense practices such as properly cleaning eggs, cleaning coops regularly, and hand washing following handling of chickens and unwashed eggs keep everyone healthy. Chickens are safe and easy to maintain, interesting to tend, and environmentally friendly. There are many local outlets for the purchase of healthy, vaccinated, responsibly bred chickens available in a wide range of interesting varieties. These proprietors serve our neighboring townships as well that have already legalized chicken ownership, such as Chester and Montgomery counties. Here in Radnor Township, chickens would certainly complement the bucolic nature, and legalizing their ownership would be recognition of the desire of a significant portion of Radnor's population.
Some of the things that we're going to try to, in this proposal you've given that you've given to us for us to present to the Board of Commissioners, is some rules that you think that would be useful, that they can sort of go with, and then from there, I guess, expand on more of a legislation. So some of these things you were talking about here, some different ones that I did notice one different one, but go ahead. So. Some of the it was 4 hens, you said, per?
Yeah, and I think it's important to have a minimum. And you'd only know this if you spent time around chickens, like I have, 3's a crowd. 3 has huge potential to be a crowd, and when they're not getting along, it impacts their health. And obviously emotional well-being. Chickens are very gregarious. They're very tuned into each other. And if sometimes you have 3 and they will, peck it or 2, and they'll peck at the 3rd. So 2 will pair up oftentimes, and then the 3rd one gets picked on, and then they get their feathers pulled out, they bleed, they just don't thrive. So 4 is a much better number. That's why I said minimum of 4.
Okay. And newer is also this single rooster per property is allowed only with approval of neighbors. Is that something that we?
I checked a lot of the township ordinances throughout the country, and I would say about 10% of them do, surprisingly, and I didn't know this, do allow roosters. And with the caveat that it's a neighborhood by neighborhood basis. If the neighbors don't mind, then it's fine. One township stated their reasons for allowing roosters very eloquently. They said for 2 reasons. One, for cultural reasons of kind of hearing a rooster in the morning, and the other reason being for protection of the flock. So, a rooster will protect the hens. They'll also alert the hens if there's any free ranging going on. They'll alert the hens that there's a predator in the area, and they'll often be very aggressive and go after a predator as well, like a fox or a raccoon or a red-tailed hawk or whatever. So it's good to have a rooster. And depending on, not everybody would agree, so that's why it would be very important to get consensus of neighbors, because they are allowed. But having had chickens, it really is nice to hear a rooster in the morning. So, and throughout the day as well.
Mr. Chairman, the commissioners did receive a letter against this idea. I don't know, was it forwarded to you folks? And only one, but the person who sent it referenced an organization called UPC, and their website is upc.online-org. And they're against this because they talk about the cruelty and that it's a fad, and people, then once the fad's over, how they get rid of the chickens, and it's inhumane. Yes, but you should be aware of it, because I'm sure we'll hear more if and when it comes, not if, when it comes in front of us.
Okay.
I don't know if
And
anybody else on the board
I'll
had
forward this one to you, Doc, and you can send it out to the group.
Okay.
Anybody else had opinions on the board about, I've never raised chickens. I don't really know how far away you hear a rooster calling. I mean, if you say neighbors are in agreement, does that mean blocks or?
I was thinking about that, and I don't know. That's something that we would have to determine.
There was a rooster on our street a few years ago, and I would say half a block away. And at 5 in the morning, he was calling us to wake up. And after 3 mornings, there was silence. So, I don't know how that happened, but
He was sitting in a pot, cooking. That's funny.
I just didn't know if we were going to, just do want to discuss this more, or sort of just give the Board of Commissioners kind of some guidelines, make it clear, if they have questions, we can make it clear why a rooster might be part of this plan, and again, let it be debated by the board.
It can be debated, and I think most people would not personally opt to get a rooster.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think. They're really doing it for the eggs. I also, I did not include, and some townships did have a statement about chickens only being used for eggs and not for meat. I'd say about half of them did. Half of them had stipulations that they were only to be used for eggs and no butchering. I thought it was silly to put that in there, to be honest, because we buy chicken, we buy dead chickens in the township every day at the Giant. I just think it's silly. I just don't think it's an issue. I don't think people are going to be butchering chickens anyway.
Joan, are
So-
you recommending that it's only for the use of the individual, so that they're not raising the eggs to sell them, they're raising them for
Well, that's a
personal
good
use?
point, too. And some townships do have that stipulation that it's not for sale. So, they don't want people having egg farms and egg stands and making money from it. However, I don't even know that it's necessary to put that in because we're allowing only a few hens. Nobody's going to be making money from that.
I'd put it in.
You would?
There's going to
Okay.
be somebody that's going to try to be slick.
Okay.
And the other question that I had was, there's always going to be somebody going to try to be slick. So just speaking from somebody that works at a grocery store, you have to hold eggs at 45 degrees or below. When do you have to start doing that? So your chicken has an egg, for it to be held cold and
Yeah.
within the food code, it has to be held at 45 degrees or below. So is there, I don't know the reason behind the law. You're the doctor. How
They
long can I have an
actually-
egg sitting before I can?
Eggs can sit on, when I had chickens, we just left the eggs on the counter. For weeks at a time, they really don't go bad. There are regulations that mandate in the grocery store for commercial sale, they have to be refrigerated, period. But actually, they actually don't.
So there is no actual practical reason behind it. It just freshness. Yeah.
I guess
Quality,
because in the
guess.
grocery store, they can be on the shelf for 6 weeks, so maybe that's sort of getting into, the maximum area that before you could potentially have bacteria grow. But no, they can be at room temperature for a long time.
Okay.
And Joan, I've heard there's a difference between the shells of the eggs in the supermarket versus the shells of the eggs that are freshly laid, where a coating is actually kind of rinsed off of those eggs when they're supermarket, and then at home, when your chicken lays the egg, there's I can't remember the name of the coating on the outside of the egg that tends to protect it more from less porous or something.
Yeah, there is, and it keeps it keeps the eggs from dehydrating. So it does make them last longer as far as the volume, the volume. However, and all the egg people say, no, that coating's very important, keep it on. When I had chickens, I would scrub those things under hot water with vinegar, and trust me, there was no coating left, and I don't care what the egg people say about this coating. But yeah, you're right, it does protect against dehydration.
Do most general veterinarians in the area, would they help care for sick birds, or is there specific
No,
veterinarians that care
no.
for sick birds?
Dr. Donato does. There is another avian vet in Malvern. I would. There are probably about, in our township, I think Len Donato is the only person. Within 15-mile radius, there are probably 3 or 4 people who can handle birds. I'm not one of them.
So anybody have any more comments, any things that we want to consider removing or keeping in the proposal to the Board of Commissioners? I don't know.
The final point here about applicants may be required to take a local course on chicken husbandry. Under what circumstances, and who would mandate that you need to go and learn how to look after chickens before or after you start?
That's a good question, and I thought that was something we could discuss. Maybe if we could get a course to be held through mainline school night, or if we could have somebody in to conduct a seminar through the township, we could require that, how that would be done before they get before they apply to get the chickens, or would we send out a notice to anybody we have who we know has chickens saying, we request that you come to this, and then is it mandatory or is it a suggestion? I don't know. That's something that we could talk about.
Who runs it?
Who runs what?
Who conducts the teaching, the course?
Um,
Who's the subject matter expert who lectures the would-be chicken owners?
We would be able to find somebody,
What?
yeah.
Qualified?
We've had a couple of township residents actually come in with a couple of groups that do these talks, and one of them specifically mentioned, a course that's given and already sort of set up. Again, whether this is something online that people can do to sort of make it more safe for themselves when they raise these things, or is the Board of Commissioners going to require more of a mandatory thing? There's certainly no requirements, to have a baby. You don't need to take any course on that. You don't need to take a course on raising a dog. But I think that, as we sit here and talk about the safety of these chickens, I think it's important for us as a Board of Health to sort of say, look, if you have some information, this is going to be a safer practice no matter what. Knowing how to handle feces and knowing how to handle their living areas and spaces, knowing how to handle the chickens themselves and washing up afterwards, and all the important things that I think they'll bring up would make it safer for the entire township. So I think that we have to lay some of this onto the board and their sort of laws and bylaws sort of committees to sort of figure some of this stuff out. And I guess, in my opinion, I think we've delayed this a while. We want to get this to the board so they can start to make some real decisions if they have time to get some of that done. So.
Is everybody in agreement on the space as far as how far chickens need to be from the property line, or coops rather, from the property line and from the neighboring houses? So I said 20 feet from the property line, no less than 40 feet from the neighbor's actual house.
Seems to make
Is that
sense.
reasonable? Okay.
Is
I
this
guess
what
we
you
don't-
found, like when you were looking through the different ordinances?
They were, yeah, I mean, they're sort of all across the board, but I would say this is about an average. And most of them do address not only how far from the property line, but how far from the actual house as well.
It seems reasonable.
Yeah, I guess the only concern I had was when I saw the single rooster per property allowed, and I just didn't know if that was me just being a little bit cautious, or if
About what?
it's
I'm
the
sorry.
rooster.
We can get that out, we can get rid of it.
Yeah, I don't know. Any thoughts, anybody?
I was not happy having a rooster on my street.
Okay.
I can't say I'd be thrilled either, but
I can't say I would be either.
I'm lucky if I get to sleep, wake up around 5:30, 5:45, 5 would be early.
That's funny. My neighbors always loved it, I
Did
have
they?
to say, yeah. But I think there are early people, and so many people joked around about it. It was a humorous subject for the neighborhood. But they were also all aware that anytime they gave the message, the rooster would be gone. And in, probably 5 years of having roosters, nobody ever said, I don't like it. So,
Yeah,
Keep it, you think?
Keep it and let
Yeah,
the people
let the
decide.
board-
Okay.
I would keep it.
well, yeah, I would agree.
I could be comfortable with that if people want it. That sounds good. Okay. So I think that the best route to go is to sort of get this on a path to the Board of Commissioners, is to vote on, did we make a change? What was the change we had said earlier? Joan, did we say something has changed? Wait,
Oh,
four?
no selling eggs.
Okay, so adding on the no
Okay.
selling of eggs. So then we'll get it really fully typed up so we can email that to the commissioners. But if we, as a board, would like to kind of debate any more, or do we move this on to a vote to give us our recommendation from the Board of Health with these simple rules? And I think a lot of discussion about safety and as well as benefits to the community for this type of husbandry. So, anybody else with any debate points? No? Would somebody like to call this to a vote?
I would like to move acceptance of
Okay.
the suggested regulations for chicken owning.
All right. Does anybody have a second?
I second.
Okay. So we will vote. All in favor of the current regulations to be presented to the Board of Commissioners for raising chickens, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Being there are no nays, we have approved this. And Joan and I will work this month to get a formal copy sent to the Board of Commissioners for their review. That's great. Okay. On we go. All right. I don't think there's any big updates with the Villanova construction. Obviously, it's moving very quickly, but I don't think there's any meeting updates that I've seen. So we'll be waiting on the next meeting and give an update to the community at our next meeting as well. And any word, from Mr. Kane about the students yet? Do we have any names of students or people that are interested in possibly an internship with the board?
I didn't ask any students. I was asked to provide the contact information for Mr. Bechtold. I did that. I did email him and Mrs. Pearsall, who are involved, and who is our contact, or who is the person who works with many of our student volunteers, to let them know that the Department of Health will be reaching out, but I have not reached out.
We'll talk to Dr. Leader a bit and maybe reach out this month to the school to see if some students want to sign up.
So we're just missing contact again? We're missing communication?
I guess so. Is it Mrs. Pearsall's at the high school?
Well, it needs to go through Mr. Bechtold, and when we were in that upstairs room upstairs, I know I emailed 2 people from the Board of Health with his contact information, at least from the emails. You know, I just hit a reply to an email from earlier, but I can do that again.
Do you want me to reach out to him? I'm happy to do that.
Typically, it's the Board of Health reaches out to get their interns. I was never involved with getting interns before.
That's fine. Do you want me, what's his name? I could...
Dan, I'll just reply all to one of Larry's emails, and whoever wishes to contact them, they can.
Okay. Yeah, I'll reach out. Okay.
The email went to Dan and we were copied. September 18. Mhm.
Okay. So hopefully maybe by mid-month, if we can contact each other by email and kind of see if we're getting rolling on this, to have somebody or a couple kids in here next meeting, that'd be awesome.
We want them to be involved with the Teen Week in January.
So we have a couple months to work on things. It is. It is coming quickly with this weather. Nothing new on teen sleep updates that I can update anybody on, so I just put that on there in case there was any new updates, but I didn't see anything else new. We're going to be working on, possibly with some community members, on setting up some kind of program. We haven't gotten into the details of that quite yet. As far as new business would be next, obviously when new students are around, we're going to talk about a social media campaign for possibly for Teen Health Week, and any other ideas that they might have that might be helpful. And also, I think it's an important thing to think about, just sort of expanding the ideas that we do with the teens, not the teens in the community, I'm sorry, with our students that we get. Traditionally they've done some projects and some health information for the community, but I think it should be more wide open and get some of their suggestions on what would be other interesting presentations depending on their interest in public health. There's certainly lots of opportunities for public health volunteering in the community, in the city, and different places, and reporting back to our board about some of those things. Just some thoughts I had about other things that if a student is interested in public health in general, that we could maybe direct them, and maybe even if one of them has interest in something that one of us on our board, our occupation, that we could help them in some way, maybe by have them shadow our job, or help them out with something they're interested in, and make it a great experience in both directions. Other new business I would just like to bring up is, I believe, Nancy, you emailed me this month that you're going to do some presentation next month, a little bit on updates on the crumb rubber fields. Thank you. I will be looking for other people to do some other interesting things that they may have interest in presenting to the community for the December meeting and the January and February meetings as well. So if anybody has an issue that they would like to talk about that has anything to do with public health, please email me and let me know what's a good month for you to schedule that 5-minute or 4-minute talk. Very quickly, I'll just kind of talk about one aspect of something we discussed last week, which is medical marijuana. Just wanted to let the community know this month rather, just about the law, and then at some other point, I think we can get into some of the medical science behind medical marijuana. There's a lot of information out there, but just so everybody's aware that Act 16 It's called the Medical Marijuana Program in Pennsylvania, was approved by Governor Tom Wolf, and it was signed on April 17th, 2016, and the regulations began on December 21st of 16 with an implementation of hopefully early in 2018. It's an interesting piece of legislation. It allows for the medical use of marijuana in certain forms only for a list of serious medical conditions that are listed under the Act, and they include AML, autism, cancer, Crohn's disease, spinal cord damage, epilepsy, glaucoma, HIV and AIDS, Huntington's disease, inflammatory bowel disease, seizures, multiple sclerosis, neuropathy, Parkinson's disease, and post-traumatic stress disorder, intractable pain, and sickle cell. So it is a list of 12 or 14 diseases that are specifically regulated to be able to use these products that will be, in fact, grown and manufactured in the state by licensed prescribers and dispensed by licensed prescribers and recommended by licensed prescribers. It can only be obtained in the pill form, in the oil form, in a topical form, and some vaporization forms that do not include dry leaf or plant form. Thus, I believe the legislation is trying to prevent some of the distribution in the gray or black market by not allowing dry or leaf product. There will also be tinctures and liquids available, which are similar, I think, to oils and similar to each other. Let's see here. The processors and growers have already been approved, and they're on their way of making product. The dispensary applications have been approved as well, and they've been awarded as of June of 2017. So the pieces of the puzzle are together as far as the manufacture, the distribution, and now the last piece of the puzzle is just finishing up, and that's the physicians who are going to be recommending product to patients based upon those certain diseases. The State Regulatory Commission has made a mandatory 4-hour course for physicians in addition to a fee in order for them to apply to be a medical marijuana recommender. Interestingly enough, in Pennsylvania, the physician does not recommend what type they need. The dispensaries are the ones that make the recommendation of what type of product would be best for that patient. The physician is just the person who gives them a sort of a medical marijuana card that they are able to obtain the product from the dispensaries. Let's see. Okay. There's some other minor things in the law that talk about caregivers. Since there are some children under the age of 18 who would be candidates to receive this medication, they're obviously not able to drive and get to this medication, so caregivers are also being licensed to be the distributors to their children or to people who can't purchase or get the product themselves. So the caregivers will be also need a special permit to do that. So that's the basics of the law. There will be one of the things that the law definitely, and it's interestingly worded, is it allows for a lot of transition as caretakers, patients, physicians, distributors, growers, and dispensaries all have experience as the law takes place in 2018. There will be lots of changes and updates based upon safety and I'm sure many other things. So I think it's a very interesting law. I think it's interesting that we are finally joining the other 30 states in this country that allow the compassionate use of marijuana for what it can be used for, that seems like it can be used for some people to have a better quality of life. And that's the goal, I think. That should be the goal of public health, is to give people a better quality of life. We can talk about in the future a little bit more of the science behind it. And there is some science behind it. In fact, these physicians are required to take this 4-hour CME course on it, so there is a bunch of scientific research out there on the use and the benefits for some conditions. Any questions?
I think the issue that all of us as advocates should be aware of is that if Congress would reschedule this product, it is currently Schedule 1. It has supposedly no socially redeeming value. But in fact, many Schedule I substances are turning out to have potential in specific conditions. It needs to be rescheduled so that research can be freely accomplished. That's what we need. And so I feel really strongly about the rescheduling issue.
No, I do too. I think that's an important issue. And I think that the U.S. has already fallen behind in that research, and a lot of the good research is coming out of foreign countries where it's not that way, in Israel and all throughout Europe, where there's some places that they can do research on these products without the restrictions of the DEA in their system. So we're using a lot of their good research to make our good decisions, and I think that's will be a benefit to our country as well, just to reschedule. And then I guess when we talk about public health, we have to also be a little bit, when you're just, Nancy brought up about Schedule I and the serious consequences of possession of a product that is still a Schedule I drug. And it's important for everybody to know, although Pennsylvania's law allows the people who have a medical marijuana card to have and be in possession of these products, anyone else who's in possession of these products is still violating federal law. In fact, even the medical marijuana patients are violating federal law, although the Obama administration had made a statement from the district, from their Justice Department, that basically said the federal government wouldn't pursue folks who are using marijuana for medical purposes. And we'll just see how long it lasts, and hopefully they'll continue on the compassionate use of marijuana for people who need it. But again, back to the idea of the Schedule I drug and all this, there was an article just today on Channel 10, NBC affiliate locally, that a study was done that in Philadelphia region, that 70% of all arrests in Philadelphia were, I'm sorry, say this again. Black adults in and around Philadelphia were 7 times more likely to be arrested for pot than white adults in the Philadelphia suburbs area, even though multiple studies have shown that the amount of use between whites and blacks is almost exactly the same. They're 7 times more likely to be arrested for pot if you're a black person. And 70% of all arrests in Philadelphia were millennials, people between the ages of 18 and 30. So it is certainly a public health issue when it seems like people are being targeted for the same thing. And in addition to that, it's not as simple as just I'm arrested for this product. It really does have serious consequences for jobs, for getting into college, and all these things over possession of a product. So it's another public health threat that we've sort of ignored for many years because we're fighting the war on drugs. So off of my soapbox. Okay. All right. Anybody else have anything for new business or anything to bring up? I always encourage the community to contact us and let us know if there's anything we can do for you as the Board of Health to make your lives more livable in the township. And if any of my board members have anything that they're passionate about and want to bring up as well, we're happy to help. For some announcements, the 2017 Radnor Fall Activity Guide is available online. The leaf collection schedule I saw is finally posted, so we'll know when to put our leaves out. And see that there's no public participation, so I'll remind everybody to get their flu vaccines and also to drop your unused medicines into the medicine drop-off here at the Township building. And if anybody else has any other announcements, anything else going on for the month of October? No? Okay. So with that, we will adjourn and reconvene here on Monday, the 20th of November at 5:30. Is that Thanksgiving week?
Yeah.
It is Thanksgiving week. So if anybody has any conflicts that week, please just email me, let me know so we can know if we should keep the meeting, okay? Thank you very much for attending.